Hi, Mr. Jones. So I hear that you have had hypertension for quite some time and that it has been unmanaged. With hypertension, if you do not manage it, it can lead to different complications down the road. So, what is hypertension? Hypertension is your blood pressure being elevated over a certain period of time, consistently elevated. Blood pressure takes into consideration how hard your heart is working to pump the blood and how much stress is being put on your vascular system as the blood is flowing through with each and every heartbeat. Systolic blood pressures over 130 and diastolic blood pressures over 80 would be considered hypertension, especially when it's over that long period of time, like I said. There's actually a few different types of hypertension. The most common is primary hypertension, and this is where your sympathetic nervous system is telling your cardiovascular system to work harder than it actually needs to happen. Your heart is pumping stronger, it's also pumping more beats per minute, and your vascular system is constricting so that flow of blood is tighter almost in your vascular system. Secondary hypertension comes from an underlying cause, and this could be things like medication side effects, kidney disease, or even adrenal or endocrine disorders. Secondary hypertension is also usually a little bit less responsive to medications and can have higher blood pressures compared to somebody that has primary hypertension. Either way, with either type of hypertension, there can be a risk of complicated hypertension down the road. Things with complicated hypertension deal with the amount of stress that is put on the heart that can actually end up turning into heart failure. Other complications with hypertension deal with the vascular system themselves. Sometimes with that increased pressure, the walls of your veins and arteries can almost be thinned out from so much pressure happening to them, or they can get thick and narrowed. And this can happen to any vascular blood vessels, such as the ones in your arms or your legs, but it can also be more serious ones, like the vessels in your heart, your kidneys, your brain, and even your eyes. Serious complications from hypertension could be things like stroke or kidney failure. So you've told me a bit about your history, and you have some modifiable and non-modifiable risks. So let's talk about the non-modifiables first. I hear that both of your parents died from hypertension, and I'm so sorry to hear that. Genetics can play a role in developing this condition, and I think that was probably the case with you, considering it was from both sides. Non-modifiable risks could also include things like your job. While you could get a new job, I would never ask somebody to do that over hypertension. But I do think that the stress of your job as a police officer is all the more reason that I think you need to have your PCP managing your hypertension to avoid further complications. Modifiable risks that I want to talk to you about today are your alcohol consumption and your weight. I am super proud of you for quitting smoking though, because that can also prevent further complications from your hypertension. Alcohol consumption has actually been shown to increase the systolic blood pressure 30 minutes and 12 hours after drinking. And it sounds like you drink several beers every day, and drinking daily can actually be maybe a reason why you could have developed hypertension as well, since it's so consistent. As far as your weight goes, so you've told me that you do not really pay attention to your diet as far as carbs, fats, and sodium. Now, with sodium specifically, it can increase hypertension because it is actually pulling the fluid into your blood vessels, creating more force on those vascular walls. Doing cardio exercises can help that vascular system as well, though. It can make your heart not have to work as hard to pump the same amount of blood, if not more. And it can also make those blood vessels almost more trained to receive the blood better, cutting it down on that cardiac output as well as that vascular resistance. So I really do think that by working on your weight and your alcohol consumption, that will help prevent more risks from happening down the road. A big complication that could happen from hypertension that you could be at risk for is something called an aneurysm. And what that is when the pressure on those artery walls can almost create like a ballooning effect because it's trying to make more space for the blood to flow. But unfortunately, those walls can get really thin. And this could happen in major arteries like your aorta, but also the arteries in your brain. And so when the balloon is thin, it can leak blood or can actually even rupture, which is a life-threatening medical emergency. So the best ways you can mitigate your risk from hypertension complications becoming more serious than just your blood pressure is by creating an exercise routine, cutting down your alcohol consumption, and managing your diet just to make sure it's more well balanced. But the biggest takeaway I want you to have from this is to go to your primary care doctor and have them help manage your blood pressure to avoid any long-term complications. Thank you.